All right. Welcome everyone to RMU Psychology Presents Let's Talk How to Find a Thesis Topic. So I just want to remind everyone to keep your microphones muted, and if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat, or you can wait till the end and ask those questions. We will be recording this presentation. So just an overview of today. My name is Briana Bunner. I am a first-year student in the MS in Counseling Psychology program, and I'm a first-year grad assistant. So today we'll be talking about how to identify your interests and passions, how to articulate those thoughts, how to use class assignments to develop your thesis topic and your interests, discuss your ideas with others, and potential topic ideas. So I know that finding your thesis topic can be kind of difficult, especially if you don't know where to start or what to do. I know that was in my case. I had no idea what was going on. So Dr. Mondo was able to help me with mine. But the first thing that I think will be really helpful is identifying your interests and passions. So you can ask yourself a couple questions. The three being, what topics do you find appealing in this field? What topics leave you puzzled and wanting to know more? And do you see a problem that you can solve? So with that, those three questions are able to kind of think about, kind of generate some thoughts around that. And then another thing that you can do to kind of find those interests and passions would be think of activities that you enjoy doing in your work, in your leisurely time, and in your family time. So those can kind of be some topics that, you might think about and want to explore further. So, and then identify why you enjoy those. So is it mental stimulation? Is it the use of your talents and skills? Is it a sense of achievement? Is it excitement? Are you curious about it? Is it useful and needed in the field? So let's move on. And then once you kind of identify those passions and those interests, you kind of pick that apart and, you keep thinking about various things. And I think it would be beneficial to articulate those thoughts. So making sure that you're writing them down, jotting them down in a journal or a notebook, or even in your notes on your phone. I think once you kind of write those down, you can, over a period of time, look back and be like, okay, I have some common themes. Like for me, for example, I had a lot to do with like stigma around mental health with student athletes. I was very much interested in clinical sports psychology. And I knew I wanted to work with the student athlete population. And so I was thinking about various things, and my common themes kind of revolved around what barriers are there to seeking mental health help, what are the behaviors behind that, and like how that stigma kind of relates to that. So I ended up doing a survey and figuring that out within the student athlete population at Robert Morris. But if you write them down, you'll be able to kind of see those themes that kind of revolve around what you want to do or potentially look into. Next, I would say use class assignments to develop those interests. So that can help you to explore your interests. It'll help you to start narrowing down exactly what you want to do or look into. It'll give you a chance to articulate some of those thoughts that you have, and it'll also give you a chance to examine the bibliography related to the subject. So you can look into like other research that has been done, articles, journals, even talking to professors about, what are some relevant topics in the field? What are gaps that may need to be filled? How can I kind of do that in this field? So that kind of comes in where like you're discussing those ideas with others. For example, you can talk to Carrie and I, so grad assistants or graduate students. We can help you identify thesis topics, identify what to read, such as like journal articles or previous research assignments, or like even our papers that we've done or thesis assignments we've done. Also interesting gaps in the field and who to work with. So I'll kind of talk about this a little bit later, but once you kind of figure out what you want to do with your thesis, you have to find a faculty mentor, faculty supervisor to kind of help you through the process to make sure everything's kind of flowing nicely. And you can do that by looking at their fields of study. So we'll talk about the classmates. So maybe if you just sit down with some of your classmates and like bounce ideas off them, like allow them to be a soundboard for you to like see what would be a good topic, what would be too much, like, is this the right fit for me? Is it something that I'm going to be interested in? I do know like the thesis takes a long time. You know, it's a lot of hours, a lot of hard work put into that. And if you don't thoroughly enjoy the topic, it's going to be difficult to get through that. So next, I would say professors. So whether that's full-time or part-time or professors from other universities, check out their research fields and see like what's going on, like where their interests lie, where they're doing research in, and that can help you gauge like to see who your faculty mentor can be and who can kind of help you through this process and identifying topic ideas. So like I said, find a professor who works with the topic related to your general interests. They'll also help you identify thesis topics, what to read, and how to find those interesting gaps within the field. So next, I'm going to kind of go into some examples that I kind of just thought about in case like they sparked an interest in you and kind of just gave you somewhere to begin. So in a particular branch of psychology, social psychology, you can look into prejudice and discrimination, such as like homophobia, sexism, racism. That's a big factor, especially nowadays. I think this would be something really interesting to look into and get to know more about. Social cognition, person's perception, attitudes, social controls and cults, persuasion, propaganda, and marketing, attraction, romance, and love, nonverbal communication, pro-social behavior, and leadership. Next, we have the DSM, like clinical-based disorders or types of therapies. So you can look into abnormal psychology, whether that's eating disorders, depression, phobias, borderline personality disorder, seasonal affect disorder, schizophrenia, antisocial personality disorder. The DSM has a plethora of information about the various disorders, but maybe you can see how that relates to your population if you're interested in that. So you can explore the list from the DSM, or you can kind of look into a type of therapy, whether that's CBT, group therapy, psychoanalytic therapy, or humanistic therapy. There's a bunch of therapies out there. Some are evidence-based, some are not, but you can maybe also see how that relates to the population that you want to work with. Next, we have human cognition. So cognitive psychology can be anywhere from thinking, language, intelligence, decision-making, dreams, false memories, attention, perception, speech disorder, problem-solving, judgment, and memory. So there's a lot of good content in here because like the brain is, like we know about the brain, but sometimes there's some things that come up that, you might be able to learn about. So if you're interested, for example, in language, you can maybe look into see how that language relates to that population or how this language could benefit a different population, maybe things like that. Or even like problem solving or developmental disorders, how that kind of helps like with children and like adults and how the process may go. Speaking of development, so there's human development topics that you can kind of look into. Issues pertinent to early childhood, such as language development, social learning, childhood attachment, even childhood traumas. Trauma can be a big factor in developmental issues and especially in learning. Like if you had a lot of trauma when you were younger, how that kind of shifts your brain and the way your body learns about things, functions, the memories that it has. Also issues that affect older adults, such as dementia or Alzheimer's disease. Other topics to consider would be bullying, language acquisition, media violence in children, learning disabilities, gender roles, child abuse, prenatal development, parenting styles, and aspects of the aging process. So next we have choosing to analyze a famous experiment. So you might want to summarize the experiment, analyze the ethics of the research, or evaluate the implications of the study. So possible experiments you might consider would be the Milgram's obedience experiment, the Stanford prison experiment, the little Albert experiment, Pavlov's conditioning experiment, don't know how to pronounce that one, or Harlow's monkey experiment. So we actually just learned this in class about the Stanford prison experiment, that there's a lot of falsification, I guess, in it, or the sense that the researcher actually manipulated the subjects that they were working with to getting the results that they wanted, and kind of they just completely, it's not valid at all. And so the whole experiment that we've learned a lot about through interest psychology, we just found out isn't even valid. And, people tried to replicate it and it wasn't replicable. So that's something to look into. You could create a case study, whether that's individual or group. So you can provide an in-depth analysis of your subjects, including a thorough biography. You can assess the person or the group, often using a major psychological theory such as Piaget's stages of cognitive development or Erikson's 8-stage theory of human development. So when looking into that, you can kind of do more, I'm assuming more of like a qualitative study when you do that, because then you can answer, like do interviews or like in-depth questions of like a smaller group of individuals. So you could design a study or perform an experiment. So the option 1 would be what we mentioned before, which would be find a study that was already performed, confirm or deny the hypothesis, test that hypothesis, and then explain the results. Or option 2, devise the study, create your own hypothesis, collect your own data, analyze those findings, and write up your results. You can also utilize sources such as newspaper articles, scholarly books, scholarly journal articles, or even your own class textbooks. So for me, I did a quantitative study where I did a survey pertaining to the student-athlete population at Robert Morris. I found it really interesting because I could use a lot of numbers to kind of back the information that other research articles and things have already done before and that I talked about in my literature review. So I would say I kind of used other people's surveys and mixed them with my own and kind of created my own format, because there was a couple of things that I touched on that some other surveys and research studies did not touch on. Any questions? And then here are the resources.